So yesterday we left it in a pretty sad place. Jack's grandpa was going to be sent off to Twilight Towers. So let's pick up on chapter 8 of Grandpa's Great Escape by David Walliams. Chapter 8, Spit It Out. True to form, at breakfast the next morning, Grandpa was acting as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. As he sat, happily tucking into his fried eggs and bacon in the kitchen of his family home, it was clear that the old man had no memory whatsoever of last night's dramatic events. "More bread, quickly please, Charlie lady chop chop," he ordered. Mum did not appreciate being treated like some kind of a servant. Charlie lady was what posh people called their cleaners in the olden days. She looked to her husband to do something, but Dad just pretended to read the paper. 2 slices of white bread were slammed down on the table, and within a moment Grandpa began mopping up all the grease on his plate. As he devoured the bread, he announced, "I'll have bread fried next time, please, Charlie lady." "Oh, will you now?" Mum replied sarcastically. Jack couldn't help but smile, though he tried to hide it. The old man slurped his tea, followed by a "Down the hatch." Grandpa said that whenever he drank anything. "Mum, Dad, I've been thinking," announced the boy. "As I was up so late, I think it's best that I don't go to school today." "What?" replied Mum. "Yes, I can stay here and look after Grandpa. In fact, I think I should take the whole week off." Jack wasn't so keen on school. He had just turned 12, so he'd been sent off to big school, and he hadn't yet made any friends. All the other kids seemed only to be interested in the latest pop star or silly gadget. This being 1983, many kids spent their lessons fiddling with Rubik's Cubes under their desk. Jack couldn't find a single person who had a passion for model aeroplanes. On his first day, he was laughed at by some older boy for mentioning them, so Jack had learnt to keep his mouth shut. "You're going to school today, young man." Mum always called her son young man when he'd done something wrong. "You tell him, Barry." Dad looked up from his paper. "Well, it was very late last night." "Barry!" The man suddenly thought better of disagreeing with his wife, and his sentence quickly changed tack. "But, of course, you shouldn't miss school. And, in future, please do absolutely everything your mother says." Finally, he added after a rather mournful, "I know I do." Next, the woman gave her husband a rather unsubtle poke on the shoulder. It was clear she wanted him to make a big announcement about Grandpa. As Dad did not immediately respond, she poked him again. This time it was so hard he actually went, "Ow!" "But Barry?" she prompted. Mum always said Dad's name in a strange way when she was trying to get him to do something. Dad put down his paper and folded it slowly to put off speaking for as long as he could. He looked straight at his father. Jack feared the worst. Was this the moment when Dad could tell Grandpa that he was going to be sent to Twilight Towers? "Now, Dad, you know we all love you very much, and we only want the best for you." Grandpa slurped his tea noisily. It wasn't clear whether he'd heard his son, as there was no flicker in his eyes. Dad started speaking again, slower and louder than before. "Are you listening to me?" "Spit it out, cadet," replied Grandpa. Jack smirked. The boy loved that his grandfather gave Dad as much lower rank than him. In fact, it was the lowest rank there was. RAF officers' ranks were as follows. Officer cadet, the lowest of the low. Acting pilot officer, not quite the lowest of the low. Pilot officer, now you're getting somewhere. Flying officer, could still do better. Flight Lieutenant. Not bad. Squadron Leader. Even better. Wing Commander. Even better than that. Group Captain. Ooh, you have done well. Air Commodore. Look at you. Air Vice Marshal. Your mum must be very proud. Air Marshal. Ooh. Air Chief Marshal. Nearly there, dear. Marshal of the Royal Air Force. Mr. Big Pants. Dad, or Officer Cadet Bunting, as Grandpa called him, took a deep breath and started again. Well, we all love you very much. And we were thinking, well, it was the, Charlie lady. Mum glared at Dad. I mean, Barbara's idea, really. But after last night, we both agree. We thought it might be best if you went into... Jack had to say something, anything. He needed to buy his grandpa some more time. So before Dad could finish his sentence, he blurted, "School with me today!" Chapter 9. Coloured Chalks. Jack had been petitioning his history teacher, Miss Verity, to be allowed to bring his grandpa into her class all term. At his new school, they had started studying World War II. Who knew it better than to learn about from somebody who'd actually been there? What's more, all the other kids could see how cool his grandfather was. Maybe then having a collection of model aeroplanes wouldn't be so sad after all. Miss Verity was a tall, thin woman who wore long skirts down to her ankles and frilly blouses up to her chin. Her spectacles hung down from her neck on a silver chain. She was one of those teachers who somehow managed to make an interesting subject deathly dull. History could be thrilling, with its stories of heroes, villains who shaped destiny of the world, bloodthirsty kings and queens, daring battles, unspeakable methods of torture. Sadly, Miss Verity's method of teaching was mind-numbing. All the lady would do is write the dates and names in her beloved coloured chalks up on the blackboard. Then her pupils would have to copy everything down into their exercise books. Facts, 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 she would recite as she scribbled away. Facts were all she cared about. One particular history lesson, all the boys from her class clambered out the window for a crafty game of footy in the playground. Miss Verity didn't even notice they were gone. She never even turned from the blackboard. Convincing the history teacher to allow Grandpa into the classroom at some point had not been an easy task. In the end, Jack had to bribe her with a set of coloured chalks from the local newsagent shop. Fortunately for the boy, the shop owner, Raj, had sold the set of luxury chalks as part of his special offers. They had come with a free, out-of-date box of fudge. It was lucky that history was the second lesson of the day, as Grandpa made his grandson rather late for school. First, it took a while to convince the old man that when Jack said he had school, he did of course mean RAF flying school, and not just the local comprehensive. Second, the shortcut through the park turned out to be something of a long cut. Grandpa insisted on climbing to the very top of the tallest tree in the park so he could keep an eye out for enemy aircraft. Coming down took a great deal longer than going up, and in the end Jack had to borrow a ladder from the nearby window cleaner to coax his grandfather to the ground. When the pair eventually passed through the school gates, Jack looked at his RAF issue watch and realised his history lesson started 10 minutes ago. If there was one thing Miss Verity could not abide, it was lateness. All eyes turned to the boy as he entered the classroom. Jack went bright red with embarrassment. He hated being the centre of attention. "Why are you late, boy?" barked Miss Verity, spinning round from her blackboard. Before Jack could reply, Grandpa stepped into the classroom. "Wing Commander Bunting, at your service, madam," he said with a salute before bowing his head and kissing her hand. "Miss Verity," she replied, giggling and covering her mouth nervously. The teacher was obviously flattered by Grandpa's gallantry. It might have been some time since a gentleman had made a fuss of her in this way. That The teacher giggled, made the class giggle too. Excuse me. To silence them, Miss Verity gave the children one of her famous death stares. These were so chilling that they always worked in an instant. Please take a seat, Mr. Bunting. I have absolutely no idea you were coming today. She glared at Jack. But the boy offered his teacher a warm smile. But here you are, so let's make the best of it. I believe you are going to tell us about your life as a World War II fighter pilot. Roger, replied Grandpa. The teacher checked behind her in case someone called Roger had entered the classroom. Who's Roger? It means yes, miss, called out Jack. Pop your hand in the air if you've something to say, boy, she snapped before turning back to Jack's grandpa. We have begun studying the Battle of Britain. Please can you tell us something from your personal experience? Grandpa nodded and twizzled the ends of his magnificent moustache. Certainly, madame. The first day of the Battle of Britain, we all knew the enemy had something planned. Total obliteration. That's what Mr. Hitler wanted. Radar picked up a huge squadron of the Luftwaffe Junkers over the coast, with the Messerschmitt fighter planes acting as guard. There were so many that day the sky was black with them. From the back of the classroom, Jack beamed with pride. The entire class was hanging on the old man's every word. For a moment he felt like the coolest kid in school. We had no time to lose. The enemy was coming fast. If we didn't take to the air immediately, we would have been knocked out of the ground. Oh no, said an enraptured girl at the front. Oh yes, continued Grandpa. The whole airfield would have gone up in flames. My squadron was the first to be scrambled, and as wing commander, I was to lead up the charge. Within seconds, we were all up and away. I pushed my Spitfire to 300 miles an hour. Wow, said a boy at the back, looking up from his football magazine. 300 miles an hour? The Air Chief Marshal radioed me to tell me that we'll be outnumbered. He said 4-1, so I had to think fast. We needed an element of surprise. I ordered my squadron to hide up above the clouds. The plan would be to wait until the enemy was so close we could smell them, and then attack. So what date was this exactly, Mr. Bunton? Interrupted the teacher. I need to put it up on the blackboard in red chalk. Red chalk is for dates only. Miss Verity used the strictest colour coding on her blackboard. Red chalk, dates. Green chalk, places. Blue chalk, events. Orange chalk, famous battles. Pink chalk, quotes. Purple chalk, kings and queens. Yellow chalk, politicians. White chalk, military leaders. Black chalk, doesn't show up very well on the blackboard. Use sparingly. Grandpa thought for a moment. Jack's tummy twisted. He knew the dates were not the old man's strong suit. But eventually, Grandpa replied confidently, July the 3rd, 1100 hours. I remember it well. The teacher wrote these facts up on the board in red chalk, squeaking as Grandpa continued. So I waited until the very last moment. As soon as I saw the first Messerschmitt emerge from under the clouds, I gave the order. Dive! What year was this? Pardon me, madam? What year was this? Miss Verity pressed. Then, disaster. The old man's face went blanker than blank. And we will look again next week now for chapter 10 to find out what happens when Grandpa is in school. Now, I've heard some of you have done one of the Year 5 tasks and have been speaking to neighbours and relatives about their recollection of the war, and you found out some really interesting things. What a lovely learning opportunity, and I know Mrs. English really loved hearing about it. Take care. Bye.